Morning, everyone. I'm just letting John let everybody in. So if you just bear with us for a few seconds, we've got the slightly awkward pregnant pause whilst dozens of you join the meeting. So come on in. Last chance to let the dog out for a run in the garden. Get your water topped up. Get yourself comfy. Get your headphones working, whatever you're doing. So welcome. Welcome in. We'll just give it 1 minute to let people join the party, and then we'll begin. Good to see so many of you. Hopefully it's as sunny for you as it is in Manchester today, just to prove that it doesn't always rain here. Okay. John's still letting people in, but I will just start to get up my screen with yourselves. So hopefully John's let everyone in now. So you've all got yourself comfy. You've found your favourite mug. You've let the dog out for a run in the garden, and we're all set to go. So hello and welcome to Digital Superchats number 16. Can't quite believe that. The virtual room where strategy meets search, where ideas ignite impact, and where caffeinated curiosity is not only welcomed, it's required. Cheers. I'm Rick Guttridge, founder at Smoking Gun, the agency for ballsy brands with brains, and I have the pleasure of being your host this morning. Now, I don't take that lightly. As compare, I see my job as lighting the match, setting the stage, and nudging each of you just ever so slightly closer to brilliance. So let's get into it. First, allow me to set the scene. This isn't just another digital PR chat. Let me ask you something. What if the real impact of digital PR isn't just links, but leverage? What if the most valuable thing we can do for a brand isn't just coverage, but clarity? Because we're in an era where attention is fractured, trust is fragile, and Google's not the only gatekeeper anymore. AI is rapidly reshaping how audiences discover and decide. It's no longer just about being heard. It's about being found and favored again and again and again. Building mental availability that drives preference and nudges audiences to take the actions we want them to on their ever more fragmented purchase journeys. PR and SEO, done well, has the power to bridge audience desire and business direction. But that means we have to evolve, not just execute, not just get coverage, not just create content or get links, but craft intentional strategy that ultimately earns relevance and revenue. So, a thought to frame the morning, potentially a lens for you to carry across this morning's talks. Think around, are we being purposeful or just performative? Does every link, every campaign, every quote, every stat we secure, does it serve a bigger plan? Does it nudge brand, search, and sentiment in the same direction? Because that's what we're going to unpack today. Because the excellent speakers we've got lined up are here to help us rethink, reframe, and re-energize how we approach digital PR and SEO for a fast-changing world. So let me take a minute to share a little story from the trenches of modern comms. No names, this is real. A household brand in a super competitive sector, kitchen appliances. For years, their PR and social content were fine. Fine doesn't cut through audience hearts, TikTok trends, tightening budgets, and multiple rival brands with the same features bigger budgets and celebrity endorsements. The brand's procurement wanted to talk about cost per Insta post or how many stories they get out per quarter. Focused on outputs, not business outcomes. But instead of diving straight into media targets or content calendars, the team started with intention. What was the brand's cultural role? What did audiences feel about them? Not just think, where was the space that the category hadn't claimed? How could all the comms levers be pulled together for greater impact rather than working in silos? What would stand out beyond product features and benefits? That strategic shift, rooted in behavioral insight, bold creative, and a fanatical obsession with clarity, changed everything. Adding quant research to back this up, and that had procurement teams sleeping easy at their investment. An investment it was, as the return was much greater than the input. The results, not just links, nor national coverage, not social media reach, not just awards nods, but growing share of search, share of media, and vitally, market share growth. Tangible commercial brand lifting success. Because when your PR has purpose, your performance follows. And that's the power of strategic positioning. Intentional planning to guide every tactic. And that's what today's about, finding the right strategy for your success. If you want to know more about that story, you can follow the link. Now take a look around this virtual room. You're sitting alongside some of the best brains in digital PR, SEO, content, and beyond. Amazing agency folk, brand side legends, strategic thinkers, tactical doers, analysts, creative storytellers. So whether you're here to learn how AI is reshaping discoverability, how to build campaigns that do more than chase links, or how to make your audience's pain points your brand's platform, you're in the right place. But before you settle back with your oak flat white and half an eye in your inbox, please listen to me whilst I do the obligatory briefing. Rules of the day. Please stay on mute and cameras off whilst the speakers are presenting. But we do want you to interact and ask questions. To do that, probably the best thing to do is send me, the MC, questions directly via the chat facility, and myself and John, my glamorous assistant in the background, will be keeping an eye on those. You can also use the raise hand feature as well. I'll put these to the speakers at the end of their talks so we can get through those. We'll aim to be all wrapped up today by 11, just in time for a quick snack whilst you percolate and process the powerful pearls you'll have just procured from these PR pros. Phew. So, who do we have today? In this 16th edition, collated by the P.T. Barnum of Marketing Events, John McCambley, you'll hear from an amazing lineup of speakers from Cedarwood Digital, Propellernet, Impression, and Connective 3. What does the morning have in store? Louise Parker will show us how to future-proof digital PR strategies in the age of AI. Think GEO, LLMs, and smart shifts that will help you stay visible in tomorrow's SERPs. Will Waldron will move us from links to leverage, demonstrating how PR, SEO, and content should work together to drive results that actually matter. Lauren Henley is going to get us thinking like behavioral scientists, digging into customer pain points and turn them into press and performance gold. And Sarah Jane Taylorson will finish with creative firepower, bringing the 6 thinking hats frameworks to ideation in a way that makes your campaigns smarter and stronger. So each talk 25 minutes with a little time for Q&As. Get your questions ready. And if you go quiet, I'll ask the juicy ones on your behalf. Fair warning. And of course, share your thoughts on socials using the hashtag Digital Superchats. So before we kick off, I'll leave you with this. Great PR doesn't just generate buzz, it builds belief. Our job every day isn't just to tell stories, it's to move minds, to create moments that stick, to shift behavior and drive results. And the best way to do that, be intentional, be bold, be smarter than the algorithm. All right, enough for me. Let's get to the good stuff. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. First up to kick us off in style is Louise. So as Louise takes the stage and brings up her deck, I'll give you some fun facts. Louise hung out in the Blue Peter Garden, the original one in Broadcasting House, of course, not the measly Salford one. She used to live in Chicago. Very nice. Wonder if it really is as windy as they say. And she's sung karaoke with Kelly Brook. So over to Louise.
Hello, thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm Louise, and I'm going to be talking about digital PR and AI, some simple adjustments to future-proof your strategy. I'm going to start off by asking who remembers infographics. I've worked in digital PR for around 10 years now. When I first joined, it was all about the infographic. They were really popular, they did really well with journalists, you got lots of links from them. They were digital PR gold until they weren't, until they kind of fell out of favor, people moved on, they wanted different things. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because digital PRs are very used to things changing. So that could be the media landscape, it's incredibly volatile at the moment, so we have to adjust to that. We're digital PRs, so we're thinking about what Google wants and what the kind of links they need, and that changes as well. So we have to adapt to that. And at the moment, I think a lot of people, the thing that we're thinking, okay, how do we adapt to this is AI. And it's been, widely spoken about. And I think, it's kind of reaching that point where it went from the early adopters talking about it to kind of people in the pub and your mum even like dabbling with ChatGPT or something like that. So it's understandable that people are thinking, okay, what are we gonna do about this? And if you work in digital PR or you're kind of SEO adjacent at all, you're probably thinking about AI in these kind of ways. You're thinking about the LLMs, so something like ChatGPT, but also Perplexity on Claude on a smaller scale. But the places and the AI platforms where you can go and perform a search and, to be honest, get a pretty decent answer back. And you're also probably thinking about Google and the AI overview. So when you kind of go in and perform a regular Google search now, more often than not, you will get an AI overview, which basically tells you the answer without having to navigate to anywhere else on the internet. And I just wanted to include a couple of stats right at the beginning, and just to put a few things into context, because I think it's really important because it can feel quite a panic inducing thing to have such a big change and have everyone talking about what a seismic thing this is. ChatGPT has an estimated 37.5 million searches per day, and that's an estimate by SparkToro. That is a huge number, especially considering how new ChatGPT is. So that is incredibly impressive. And as I said, I think it's starting to reach that point where just, normal people, probably our friends and not just us, are using ChatGPT and playing around with it. But it's important to remember that there are 14 billion searches a day on Google. So those numbers are vastly different. The number of people performing searches on ChatGPT is such a tiny, tiny percentage of the search market in general. And I think that's really important to bear in mind at the moment. And you might be thinking, okay, well, there's 14 billion people searching on Google, so we should be worrying about the AI overview, right? And that is correct. It should be very much on your mind. You should be thinking about it, considering it. It is happening, it is here. However, it's not always correct. So this is an AI overview about me. And broadly speaking, it has a lot of correct information. But it does go on to say that I lead the reactive digital PR offering at Cedarwood Digital, which I have never done and I don't do now. So not the most reliable of things all the time. And I think, you guys will be plugged into this, that you will see every other week a new story about how AI overviews are wrong. So that might be that they're wrong in a funny way, like the fact that you can put in an idiom that doesn't exist and Google will tell you very, very confidently what it means. So, for example, unfortunately, you can't lick a badger twice isn't an actual idiom. But it also can be really like serious things that they can give incorrect information on, and it's not a great user experience. And it's not to say, oh, just forget about it. No one's really using ChatGPT, and AI overviews are sometimes wrong. That's not really my point. But I think it's very easy to get swept up in this kind of like hype cycle of it's all changed, throw out everything that you've done before and replace it with something new. And it's just good to remember some stats and some figures and some realities of what it's actually like to use these AI search functions. However, if someone is researching a topic on ChatGPT or they are using an AI overview and they get a good answer, you would far rather be there than your competitor as a brand. And that is completely understandable. But the good news is, if you're doing digital PR already, you are likely already doing a form of GEO, and GEO is generative engine optimization. It's kind of the how do we influence these AI searches. LLMs kind of act as if they kind of work on predictive text. And I think it's quite important to understand how AI's work, as mind-boggling as that can be, and how LLMs, large language models, work. LLM would be how you would describe ChatGPT, for example. So if we knew with Google that links were very important, and that's how you could kind of help to gain rankings for your brand, having other websites linking to you. With LLMs, it is much more acting like predictive text. So if you imagine you're writing on WhatsApp or on iMessage, and that kind of guesses your next word, they are guessing your next word based on what you previously have put into your text messages, and also just generally how text messages work and how language works and the information they have on that. They're kind of just thinking the next likely word is X. And on a massive scale, that is kind of how something like ChatGPT works. So really, if you want your brand to be visible in LLM, so ChatGPT, for example, it needs to see your brand being referenced alongside your industry, product, or service. They need to see your villa brand, for example, being referenced alongside villa holidays, Mallorca, infinity pools, any of those kind of key topics, words, subjects that your potential customers are going to put into something like ChatGPT, and where you feel your brand should be. You need to be putting that information out there on the internet so the LLMs can pick up that those things are connected. And who knows how to get their internet talking about their brand better than digital PRs. And that is why digital PR is so important when it comes to influencing AI search. Now, of course, I would suggest a few tweaks. I would love to say that you don't need to do anything at all and you're all good and you can carry on as you are, but that wouldn't make a very interesting talk. So I do think that there are a few tweaks that you can make to your digital PR strategy. That means that, yes, you can continue to influence Google and help you with the rankings on that side, because let's remember that not everyone uses the AI answers. There are a lot of people still going into those blue links, so let's still keep that. But some tweaks that you can do to make sure that your work is kind of ticking both boxes as best as you can. So that's what I'm going to talk about now. The first thing I would mention is rethink what you consider good coverage to be. So ChatGPT and other LLMs can't actually see some of the coverage that you probably think is top tier. The New York Times and Financial Times, for example. You might get coverage on one of these websites and it will make your year for your brand, because you're like, this is the absolute pinnacle. I can't believe we've done it. And if you get a link from one of these and you're a digital PR, that's even next level amazingness, incredible. But interestingly, something like ChatGPT can't see the content that is on these websites. And that is because them and other top publications don't allow them to look at it. So this is a kind of snip from a robots.txt file. I'm going to get a little bit nerdy here. Don't need to worry too much about it. But basically, it is where a website will say, okay, you crawlers, you are not allowed to see our website. So if you see on that list there, you'll probably recognize a couple of names like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. These are AI platforms that are looking to gain that kind of information from the internet to build out their AI systems. But big publications like the New York Times, like the Financial Times, and a lot of others are like, you're not having our content for free. Absolutely no way. We're going to have to strike some kind of deal, or we might be taking an ethical stance that we actually don't want AIs to be trained on our work. So we're not going to allow it to happen. Now, the Financial Times screenshot here used to be a BBC screenshot, because my point was going to mention the BBC in this. But I was just doing my due diligence and checking things yesterday. And actually, the BBC, as of yesterday, seem to have now allowed ChatGPT and Google's AI kind of crawler to be able to look at its content, which is really interesting. Nothing's been said publicly about it, so I will keep an eye on it to see if it continues that way. But it just proves that these things aren't set in stone. So they might change their mind, I guess, but more broadly, it's probably they will come to some sort of agreement with an AI platform. So The Guardian have an agreement now with OpenAI, and so they now can crawl it. And who knows, maybe the BBC does. Maybe this is breaking news, but it just is to make the point that this is the state of play now, but it might change. But important to bear in mind, because you might think that you've got your coverage on your key titles. LLMs will have loads of information about your brand, but they actually might not. On the flip side, LLMs like ChatGPT do not care about follow links, affiliate links, or canonical tags, or any of the other kind of link nerdiness that digital PRs get really into, and for good reason. Digital PRs care about follow links, they care about not getting affiliate links because that is what Google values. So that's what our kind of strategy was built around. So you might have instances where you are only going after coverage and followed links from other publications. So you're ruling out a huge amount of media who give follow links. Or you might, do the same with affiliate links, or not really go after that much syndicated coverage because it's going to have canonical tags on it, things like that. This really opens up your media list to think, okay, we will still continue to do that so that we can tick our kind of SEO box. But when you're thinking more about GEO, other websites become equally as valuable, if not more valuable, if they're like a really well-read, well-respected website. So it really makes you think that actually let's open up our media lists and think more broadly about where we're going to get our coverage and not be really pigeonholed into the kind of SEO mindset of digital PR. The second point is talking more about the product, industry, or service. Digital PRs have been known to stretch the brand a little bit, stretch relevancy to create a good story and get great links with it. So that might be an energy company talking about how much it would cost to run the Batcave, or it would be a gambling company talking about the most tattooed football team, a highest earning gamers campaign from a men's fashion company. It's not to say that this is bad work, but it isn't very helpful in telling LLMs who your brand is. If you were going to think of a bit more of an LLM friendly digital PR story, and you were a men's fashion company, then perhaps you would look at these kind of ideas. So you would maybe do a lot more product PR. Previously, in your kind of digital PR SEO head, you might have thought that's going to get me a load of affiliate links and it's not going to really hit my goals. But from a LLM mindset, getting your product in a best white t-shirts roundup for on like the Telegraph or GQ is going to be really, really valuable and helpful to an LLM to learn what you sell, what you're good at selling, what your top products are, things like that. Doing campaigns around the eco impacts of washing your clothes incorrectly, or doing a press office story about the effects of tariffs on the fashion industry, just allows you to make sure your campaigns and your stories are a lot more targeted and talking a lot more about your products and your industry. And that just really is going to inform an LLM a lot more than maybe some of those other stories that I referenced. The thing to remember is there is a reason why digital PRs try and kind of stretch the brand a little bit or stretch relevancy just a little bit, because it can mean that you can go to a lot more websites, which means that you can probably get more links, which means that you're probably going to get better rankings in Google. Like there's logic behind there. So it could be that perhaps with that more LLM friendly stories, you might get less coverage, you might get less links. And as I kind of want to try and make the point throughout the whole talk is that let's not just throw away everything else that we've been doing just to replace it with something new. I think it's really important to find the balance and to say, okay, either we can tweak a story a little bit to bring in a little bit more of the product or a little bit more of the industry, or we can just add another kind of line of activity to make sure that you're doing a little bit of both. So just something to bear in mind. Thirdly, I would use internal spokespeople to provide comment. So I've mentioned a few times now about you telling an LLM about your brand. And I think it's important to say in practice, what I mean is literally putting your brand name and having it appear next to your key industry or product as much as possible, and as in many places as possible on the web. So, for example, if you're Octopus Energy, you want Octopus Energy, green energy provider, Virgin Holidays, family holiday company, compare the market, insurance comparison website. You get what I'm getting at. And providing commentary to the press is a really great way to do this, because journalists often even ask you how you want to be quoted. Which you don't often get journalists saying, how do you want me to write this up? So this is the one instance where they come to you and say, what's your preference around this? So, for example, Jane Smith, CEO of green energy provider Octopus Energy, that when you're reading it, that doesn't seem weird, that doesn't seem spammy, that makes a lot of sense as you're reading it. A journalist would be more than happy to write it up in that way, but you're also really getting that like key keywords of what your brand is right next to your brand name, which is it's just what you want to be aiming for, really. However, the journalist request space is really crowded and it's really murky. So there are a lot of people going after these commentaries. There are a lot of people who can provide comments, so it means that you're going to have a lot of competition of trying to get that coverage with a comment. And it's also a bit dodgy at the moment. There was a recent article which spoke about how people are using AI to, giving it a bad name, using AI to come up with fake experts, really, who are saying whatever AI wants to say about various different subjects. So, and some of them, were health related things, which really isn't good. 100% not recommending that tactic at all. Very unethical and bad. But it's just to say this is what we're working with here. So my top tips really around doing this and making it interesting, new, or unusual. This is your comment that you're providing to a journalist. As I said, there is a huge amount of competition. So actually, providing something that is different is going to get you a bit more cut through than the kind of usual spiel that someone in your industry might give. Have your spokesperson available to verify over the phone. So the screenshot here from Rosie Taylor, who is a journalist, she is talking about the issues with these kind of fake AI experts, how she's experienced it firsthand, and is saying that basically the real only way that she can verify experts now is to speak to them over the phone. So that is something that I think you need to prep your spokesperson for, to make sure that they are aware that, to actually get that cut through and prove that they are a real person, which is a mad time, really, they're going to need to speak to someone over the phone. It could be quite likely. Being quick and efficient. So as I say, there's lots of competition. Sometimes it's first come, first serve within, reason. So that is very important. And being efficient as well. Don't drip feed journalists stuff. Just give them all in one email, and so they have everything they need. And then I think planning some proactive outreach around your spokesperson. So you might be sitting around waiting for the perfect story to break for your spokesperson to be able to say something, but that might not happen. And actually, there are plenty of things that you know are going to happen in a calendar that you know that your spokesperson is going to be able to make a really interesting comment on. So you can just not wait for the journal request and just go out proactively with that story and that comment. And that works really nicely because, you're not just waiting around for the perfect story to break. And finally, I would suggest consider social media. So very SEO focused digital PRs would likely not have aimed for social media coverage, as those links don't count. So if you're getting a link from Twitter, or if you used to call it X, or Facebook, those links aren't going to count for SEO. So really, if you're in that kind of SEO mindset, it's a nice to have, to put it politely. It's not something people are going after, basically. With your AI search glasses on, these platforms are now really a lot more valuable to us. It's a really compelling argument to add a social strategy to do your digital PR campaigns, which in my kind of experience and view across the industry doesn't often happen. So I put on the screenshots here to the right. So Reddit have recently had a deal with OpenAI, who own ChatGPT, to allow them to scrape all the information that's within Reddit. And I've often seen LinkedIn posts be used as citations within ChatGPT. So I pulled out those as two particular ones, because actually with your story, could you work with LinkedIn influencers? Could you look at Reddit to see how your competitors are spoken about on the platform, to see if there's any kind of tips and tricks you can take from there and take inspiration from how your competitors are being spoken about? And I think I put here, remember that platform either has to have a deal with an LLM or can be crawled by them, as I mentioned a few slides back. And so that is something to bear in mind. So something like Reddit or LinkedIn, you know that these things surface and are used within LLMs. So you know that there's value in that kind of coverage and people sharing about your brand on those platforms. However, I will say that you might do some influencer work on TikTok or on Facebook or whatever it might be. That then might catch the eye of someone who is on Reddit, who then goes on to talk about it on that platform. So you don't have to be too kind of blinkered at it. It's just something to bear in mind and be aware of it. So in summary, it isn't about stopping what you're doing, it's about tweaking and adding to it. So I think I've mentioned it a few times. We're not just scrapping everything that we know and love and just replacing it with something new. It is tweaking and adding and just giving the LLMs lots of material that talks about your brand in the right way. My kind of takeaways are, don't worry about links for this kind of LLM mindset. Talk more about brand and product, use spokespeople, and consider your social coverage. And as I was writing this out, I was like, sounds an awful lot like just doing PR, which is very interesting. I think digital PR over the years, we spent a lot of time kind of showing our value, showing that we should be kind of respected as an industry and why we're here and how we're different. And actually, very interestingly, AI search starts to kind of that digital PR bit starts to leave and you're just left with PR, which I think is a really interesting time for us. And I think it's a great time to be in the industry. And it's, yeah, very exciting. But I just thought it was quite humorous to think, well, it's just doing some great PR and getting your brand out there, which I think is quite important for any fellow PR professionals who are watching this at the moment. So thank you so much for listening. I have no idea how long I took to go through that. It could have been short, it could have been long. But thank you so much for listening to it. I hope you found it quite interesting. If you had any questions, obviously you can ask me now, but you can also find me on LinkedIn if you would like to.
Fantastic, Louise. Really, really insightful, and your timings were spot on. I love that. Consummate professional. A couple of questions for you, if I may. The scary question we're all debating. Do you think digital PRs can be replaced by AI?
Um,
Should we be worried?
I at the moment, no. I mean, I think if you listen to some proper future gazing podcasts about AI, then 30 years in the future, I think everyone should be scared about their job, no matter what it is. But right here and now, no, it's all good. I would say, however, that using AI to make for efficiencies is great. Like there are so many things where you can use it to maybe help with more laborious jobs or sense checking things, QAing things, even prompting for ideas sessions, which can probably make your day to day a little bit more efficient, which means that you can spend more time on the stuff that AI can't help with. Like I've never found AI to give me a good campaign idea, and I don't think it will because it's based on previous. You're not. It's just you're going to get an average, basically. You're going to get an average idea. So I think there's a lot. Yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned right now, personally.
Good, good. A couple of questions coming through on my favorite subject, measurement. So how would you recommend we track this sort of activity? So I guess back to the LMM training, and how would we make it measurable for senior stakeholders? So thank you,
I
Alex.
absolutely prepped for this question because it is, I was like, I absolutely know that this is going to be the question. Right now, measurement of AI or AI search and ChatGPT is really tricky. And I think I spoke with someone else who's an expert in our agency about it, and he was like, "You've got to get at the moment comfortable with not having all the answers to it because ChatGPT doesn't have an analytics function. There's no reporting that it can give, and there are lots of there's some tools out there who maybe say that they can help you with reporting, but they don't know the real data. And what's so tricky about something like ChatGPT is whereas the way you would use Google is often short keywords, it might be like Villa Holiday Mallorca. ChatGPT is not like that. The way people search is, you can get your whole life story to ChatGPT and base off a search on that. But it's very hard to do that. So reporting is really tricky, full stop. But what I would suggest, on very simplistic terms, is if you've got a few core things that you're like, our brand should and we want it to appear for these kind of things, is do your kind of manual tests, like and monitor it and see how things are changing. And it might be that your brand, doesn't appear immediately. It's important to remember that something like ChatGPT has access to the internet, but it also kind of every 6 months refreshes its knowledge. So sometimes, again, we don't 100% know. Some things can come back quickly, some things take a while. So you can do your own manual searches. I'm always keeping an eye on different tools that say that it can help you with the measurement of this kind of stuff. But right now, I've not found anything that's actually decent. What you can also see, though, is if you get any traffic from ChatGPT, you can measure that in Google Analytics, so on your brand's website. So if you can tally that with some of your PR work, that might actually be helpful as well.
And it depends on the business as well. If it's a B2B business versus a B2C mass audience, if it's a smaller sales pipeline, you might get some anecdotal feedback. We just had that as a business where some people found us and they said, "Oh, we asked ChatGPT." So that's anecdotal stuff. There's also the guys at Coverage Book are doing some interesting experiments with, I'm just looking up to make sure I get it right, in the mix.ai. So they're showing some of the media that are being used by, I think it's Gemini, particularly to train. So back in what you were saying about not all titles are being used by the LMMs, but people on the session today could have a look at in the mix.ai, see which titles are being used by some of the LMMs to train themselves to maybe think about their targets as well. Right, last one quickly. Someone said, should companies who are using AI as part of their workflows revise their sustainability policies? Because for those that don't know, using AI uses a huge amount of water for every kind of search. So I guess that's where this is coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything as a business, you need all sorts of, energy to function and things like that. I know I'm not, there's actually someone in my business called Sam Zindel, who's the MD, who would be the perfect person to get a great answer from this. But I know in general, like when it comes to our B Corp policies and things like that, it is around kind of making the best choices as possible when it comes to that kind of stuff. And like offsetting various things as well. I know that we do a lot of that. We're around planting trees. I would say in terms of sustainability around it, it's, I wouldn't be massively encouraging a lot of kind of willy-nilly usage of it. Like it is using it for good reason in the same way we use electricity for good reason and stuff like that. So having that kind of mindset as well. But in terms of sustainability policies and things like that, I'm probably not the best person to ask, but it's a very valid question, which I think a lot of people are talking about at the moment, and like the public are talking about, like with all those AI images that people were sharing on LinkedIn, it really started the conversation. So it's very new, so people are working out this kind of thing. So I don't have a perfect answer for you, but it is a good question.
Thank you, Jono, for the question. I think it's a big question and put you on the spot there, Louise. So that's,
That's all right.
and it's not your,
Give it a go.
and I think that's going to go back into every agency or business's sort of ESG sustainability policy. And maybe if there's scientific data behind you, move to carbon zero, etc., this will be factored into some of those measurements. But thank you so much. Really informative. Absolute pleasure to have Louise. So big thank you from me. And next up, I'm going to invite to come on and start to bring their slides up. We have the fantastic Will Waldron, UK PR manager at Connective 3. So I'll share Will's fantastic fun facts. He's a qualified bass guitar teacher. I have asked him to come on and do a little riff initially, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. He plays in a funk band. He has performed at the Royal Albert Hall in a ska band at the young age of 14, which is fantastic. And he's going traveling around America next year and cannot wait. Not clear whether he's going to be busking his way around or not, but I'll hand over to Will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rick. Hi, guys. I'll just do the classic check. Can everyone see my screen? Are we all good? Wonderful. So welcome to my talk, Building More Than Just Links, how to make sure your link building strategy drives success by aligning digital PR, SEO, and content. So I'm Will. I'm the UK PR manager at Connective 3. I've got around 11 years worth of experience now. I always feel old when I say that. Done lots of different types of PR. I actually started out in music PR, worked in traditional, and now I'm in digital. Worked with tons of different brands as well, Ocado, Avon, Adobe, etc. So I'm going to start with the obvious, the theme, what digital PR is in 2025. So building links it's like acquiring social proof. So when Google looks at your site and sees that you have lots of authoritative referring domains pointing back to it, it kind of drives the signals that they can look at you and think, okay, you're a trustworthy brand or a trustworthy source. The more backlinks a page has, the more organic traffic it gets from Google. So it really does affect search visibility. And the first ranking page on Google has an average of 3.8 times more backlinks than positions 2 to 10. So those first kind of 8 to 12 places on page one really do make an effect in terms of getting traffic to your page and then conversions. So the more links and the more diverse backlink profile you can have, the stronger position you're going to be in. So I've just given you a really, really top level overview of digital PR. I could go a lot more in depth, but there's more to talk about in this talk. But we've recently found through a Google leak that certain backlink qualities are going to make the organic difference. So there's SEO factors that we need to consider when we're building links. So first and foremost is relevancy. As someone in PR, anyone on this call that works in PR will probably say relevancy about 1,000 times a day, but it really is important, ensuring that the content and the site that you're getting a link on is relevant to your brand and audience. Freshly published content, so having that sort of ongoing, consistent output of campaigns, and then site authority and high quality news sites. If you can get the links on the high domain authority sites or news sites like The Guardian, BBC, etc., that's the kind of space you want to be. But again, this is very top level. We could go into more niche building, link building areas as well. And the relevancy really does come into play when you're building those links. So links are important. They are still out there. We do need them. There's lots of talks about maybe PR not being as important as it was in the past, but it generally still is. But the thing we need to note is that the organic landscape is changing. So obviously, I'm going to have to talk about AI because it's a marketing talk. We'll all have seen them when we've searched something on Google now that it comes up with the little generated answer for you at the top. Google is fully committed to integrating generative AI into search. This is only just the start, so very much part of the evolution in search, and we are going to have to be a part of it as well. So brand searches and fresh EAT content has never been more important. So this is from Ahrefs. So this was the prediction how searches will get answers before and after AI. So if you look at the top, starts with the featured snippets, so the small direct answers, and then underneath all of that would be the organic results, the links to the different pages. But now after AI, as you can see, AI has kind of wedged itself nicely in the middle of the two. So it's in the middle of the shallow topic. So a shallow topic would be if you searched, what is the weather going to be like tomorrow? Google would give you a direct answer through AI. And then there's also the deeper topics that might require insights or data or expert commentary, the more sort of in-depth pieces as well. So it sits right in the middle of those two, which tells us we need to be balancing our content and what we're putting out there to answer both the shallow topics and the deep topics at the same time. So social media search is it the new Google? I'm sure everyone on this call has tried searching for something on TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, etc. It's making movement. It's not quite there yet. So 85% of people still use Google as their preferred method of search. 15% doesn't seem like the biggest number in the world, but then if you kind of comprehend 15% of all searches are currently not going through Google anymore, and it's only going to grow, it really does tell us that the landscape is moving in a direction that we need to be adapting to. So just to give you a really quick example of how this is sort of affecting early doors for what we do at C3. So we work with Avon. You might remember Avon, they were kind of like your mum's favourite beauty brand, but they basically came to us and asked us to help them appeal to Gen Zs and millennials and get the younger audiences in. So rather than just kind of creating standard press releases and proactives and things like that, to get in front of that audience, we went straight to influencers first and then generated the influencer content into PR campaigns. So PR strategies kind of now they need to sort of integrate social first storytelling to stay relevant. So it's just an example of how the landscape is moving and how we're starting to adapt to that. So building relevant results with customer influencing content is absolutely the aim of the game right now. If there's one thing to take away from this deck, I'd probably say this is the slide. So we need to influence the customer journey now. So first and foremost is the exposure and the trigger. So what is making a person buy a product or an activity? So if I use something like trainers, for an example, if you needed a new pair of trainers, why are you buying those trainers? Is it because the ones you currently have are ruined and old? Have you seen an influencer or celebrity wear a certain pair? We need to be starting to be at the front of that journey. How can we be the trigger? How can we push people to buy something? Step two is where it gets messy, or the messy middle. So as you can see, Google's on there, offline, kind of word of mouth, the standard things, but then we now have to compete with kind of TikToks on there. So people do sort of real life perspectives of unboxing and reviews and that kind of thing that you can see on camera. You have YouTube, which is pretty much like a try before you buy now with people testing products. Reddit, which just has the most sort of real life conversations. Like there are so many places now people can go to get a really sort of in-depth account of something they want to buy or be involved with. So we need to make sure that the content we're creating when we do start our PR strategies is okay, how can we get in front of audiences on these different platforms, not just Google? So these are kind of the steps, the 1-2 steps that now we're thinking of before we start generating the ideation. How can we prompt people initially to start thinking about making an action, and then where do we need to place it for them to actually do the action? So this is why we need to start thinking beyond PR. The ideal campaign right now, of course, it needs to influence customers. We're not just building links. It's obviously a great thing to hit your KPI and fill up a spreadsheet with links. But what has that done? We need to be driving sales through our links, and we're all part of a bigger process. It should drive brand. This is hugely important now. I think if I use the trainers example again, if you were looking for new trainers, you might automatically search for a household name. So you might go in and think, oh, I'll try Adidas or Nike, etc. So if you're a smaller independent site or business, now is the time that you really, really need to be pushing your brand, your key messages, your products, your tone of voice, everything that you can possibly do to really put yourself in a competitive position. And of course, it should drive relevant links. So as the Google leak kind of stated, we need them to be fresh and consistent. You can localize them and put them through different regions depending on where you're focusing on. They need to be relevant and they need to be on high authority sites as well. So digital PR, I think, needs to be everywhere. So if this infographic kind of gives you a visual of what I mean here, so I'll put sort of PR in the center, and then when we expand out, okay, how can we branch out into these different elements? So can we make it work for different platforms? Can it be part of social media? Should we be working for influencers? Does our campaign have an aligning on-site blog? And does that content support SGE? Does it have all the keywords and the categories and all the focuses that we need in there for SEO value? And are we using data to ensure that we're in front of the right audience? So do we know where our audience gets information? Do we need to be putting billboards out there? Should we be on TV? Should we be on radio? Where is going to get their attention? So when you start with PR, we need to start branching out to these different areas. So I'm going to give you another quick example of how we did this for Goodmove. So they basically came to us and asked us to increase their SEO rankings, build high quality backlinks, and drive brand awareness. So we could have just built links via press releases, reactive activity, that kind of thing, which would have absolutely served a purpose. But instead, bear with me on the cheesiness of this, we aim for the stars. So we sent some keys to space, which is the hilarious ideation idea. Can we send something down the Thames or can we send something to space? But we thought actually, someone said it as a joke, which is always the fun of ideating. Then we thought, no, we could actually do something with this. So the whole premise of this campaign came from, we surveyed people to find out how out of reach hitting a house deposit was. And we got big percentages saying, you know, it's just so out of reach that people don't feel like they're ever going to be able to afford their own house, etc. So we thought, how could we sort of use that out of reach line within the surveys to our advantage? And we thought the most out of reach place to be is probably space. So we sent some keys up, as you can see in the visual on the top right. We dropped those keys from space, and whoever found them got 10 grand towards a house deposit. So we had a few little hiccups at the start. We had to do, there was plenty of health and safety to check that the keys didn't actually land on someone. But we got through all that and it was fine in the end. But the best thing about this campaign was it generated so many different areas of marketing that we really developed a good opportunity for overall organic progress. So first and foremost with PR, we had 3 stages. So we kind of had an announcement release, we had a progress release, and then like a winners release. So it staggered 3 elements of outreach there. We obviously had the visual of it going space. That was on an on-site blog. We put that visual on social medias as well and shared that with different influencers and people that were on board. And we just generated so much content. We've got over 80 links for it, 4 million impressions, visibility was increased, rankings were increased, and it all came from this one campaign. So it was a really fun thing to do. And it was just an example of, yeah, how you can utilize different departments within where you're working to really push organic results. And you can replicate this. So I appreciate, so I'm very lucky in a position where I'm in an agency that has lots of different departments. So if we have these ideas, we can kind of lean on other people. But I appreciate a lot of people you might be a freelancer, you might be a one person kind of marketing band. So I thought I would go through different elements that can make you thinking like a marketing all-rounder that you might have access to. And I'm hoping you at least have access to one of these as well as the PR activity that you're doing. So influence and celebrity, social media, paid media, SEO, content, and CRO. So working with influencers and celebrities to build trust around your brand whilst increasing consumer reach really can take a PR campaign to a next level now, especially for when we talk about influencing that customer journey. Depending on your brand and your demographic, influencers and celebrity can really push that. So first and foremost, you get headline grabbing at elevation. So if you interviewed a celebrity and they were in your headline, you're instantly going to turn a journalist's attention, especially if you're outreaching to sort of showbiz journalists as well. And their opinion and expertise is really sort of championed by the journalist because, say if it was a footballer talking about a football result, they're kind of the perfect person to be talking about that. And their name will attract people to read it. So always good to get the headline grabbing attention. They have a direct influence on target audience. So obviously, I think we all kind of know that influencers can be expensive, but there is absolutely a valid reason for this. It's because their audiences can be absolutely perfect to what you need. So say if you were a cleaning brand that wanted to push new cleaning products and you got it in front of Lindsay Queen of Clean's audience, her followers are the exact people that are going to buy your product. So it creates lots of engagement and that kind of thing. So it's definitely, if you do have the budget, worth exploring. User-generated content is king. So I think anyone working in PR on the call will know now that case studies are doing really, really well at the minute. It seems that even journalists want to create that first-person perspective. Like I mentioned earlier, it's almost that try before you buy element. You can literally see firsthand an authentic review of a product or a holiday destination just by finding this content now. So if you can generate that, always worth doing with an influencer. And finally, longevity and flexibility. So it really is budget dependent. I know these things can be expensive, so it might be worth looking at like multiple micro influencers dotted around the year. Or if you did have the budget, you can kind of do the bigger brand ambassador, maybe like a year-long contract with them as well. Content, like we need to be creating content that ranks, converts, and aligns with any organic performance goals. So I kind of see content and a blog, if you're doing a PR campaign, is almost an extension of the press release. So you need to address the user intent. So those kind of shallow topics and questions that your customer might want to know about, but maybe they're not as interested enough to be putting in a press release. This is what we can be putting in the blog. So you have that nice balance of the direct addressing those smaller questions and then the extra in-depth detail as well. Clarity and structure. So compelling headlines, concise paragraphs, call to action. If you have people on your site reading about something, you need to take advantage of that. So can you push them to convert? As I mentioned, think of it like a press release. You need those headlines, concise paragraphs. Keyword game on point, of course. This is the opportunity to really take advantage of the organic growth areas. So make sure they're a natural fit and you're directly answering the question. Don't put too many in there. Focus on the ones that you need to rank and prioritize being helpful through the whole thing, because we know that is the direction Google's going in. And then finally, be creative. This is the area I was talking with the content where you really can have fun. You can be interactive on there. You can do quizzes. You can have infographics showing your data, lots of visuals. Give the journalist a reason to link back to that blog page when they look at it. Give them something extra that you wouldn't necessarily put in a press release, but they can go back to the blog and really explore it. And then paid media, it's not a typo at the top. If you haven't spoken to your paid media team about their data and insights, you're really, really missing a trick. So they can literally tell you the proven paid search performers. They can tell you the keywords and categories that make the most money and the ones that make the least money as well. So you can kind of look at that and think, okay, maybe we need to generate campaigns around the performers that aren't doing so well to try and get some visibility towards them. They can literally predict audience trends for you. They can uncover emerging consumer behaviors. They can tell you what the most popular products are, who's buying what, which means you can strategically time PR relevancy and activities. So say if you work with a brand and a product has all of a sudden just gone mad with sales, you can think, oh, maybe we should get on top of this and do some activity around it. Really good for competitor edge. So they can tell you what your competitors are spending. So if you see that your competitors have put a huge chunk of budget into one product or category page or area, you know then that you should start developing something around that as well, to take some of the traffic share and so they don't want to run away with it. And then finally, it can kind of work hand in hand. So the PR findings can also fuel what the paid team does. So I'll just give you a quick example of this. We work with Thoughtful, the greetings card marketplace. We did a campaign for Valentine's Day based on the romantic cities. And we literally just did it very quickly from thoughtful sales data around each region in the UK. So we could say X amount bought the most Valentine's Day cards, pretty much. But we found that there were some regions that had never bought a thoughtful card. So we then took this data to the paid team and said, can you start directing ads to these regions? And they did do, and ever since then, they've been generating sales. So it's just interesting how it can go hand in hand. And then SEO, of course, SEO and PR are kind of best friends. But in terms of ideation to really help push your PR campaigns and link building now, make sure you really are leaning on your SEO team. They can tell you the top converting topics, keyword and category growth. Again, from both perspectives, they can tell you the keywords that are performing really well and the ones that aren't as well. So if you need to boost those categories that aren't doing so well, make sure you generate campaigns there. They can tell you what the media wants. They can do media trend analysis. They can tell you what your audience wants through social listening tools and different publication focuses. And they can look into your competitors as well. They can tell you all the publications that your competitors have links on, but you don't. So then you can try and match some of that traffic share. And then CRO, for those that aren't familiar for CRO, I'm kind of getting used to it myself, to be honest. It's almost like the digital shop front. So if you were going into a supermarket now or any store, when you go to the checkout, sometimes there's things positioned in the queue or on the counter because obviously you're already there to buy something to try and encourage you to buy something else. I think I'm right in saying CRO is essentially that, but the internet version. So why things are positioned in certain places on a page. And this is really interesting because I've been trying to figure more of this out in my CRO team at C3 and how we can use that in PR as well. So you can make sure that whatever campaigns you're doing is completely aligned with the web page content. So if they are pushing specific products on the homepage, which is the first thing a consumer will see when they go on, you should be talking about something similar if you can in campaigns to really align the message and hopefully drive people to convert when they do have a similar topic and they go through to the homepage. They see it again and think, oh, interesting, I can learn more about this. They can constantly analyze data. They can tell you the parts of the site that are popular and unpopular, which products are selling well, which pages are performing well, where people are clicking. And they can keep tracking these results and refine them. So they will tell you, okay, we've kind of come to the end of this campaign, or say this summer's sales items, we need to move on to something else. Can you swap your ideation now? So you can kind of work hand in hand with what's performing on the site. And then you can kind of personalize as well and retarget. So if you have a publication in mind that you really want to get a link on and you want to create a blog or some content around it, you could ask the people that work in your CRO team to then adapt the page slightly, maybe change the tone of voice or the imagery or the design to then hopefully try and push a journalist to link back to it because they think that your page matches their branding. There's tons you can do with CRO as well. And then last little bit of proof it works. So we work with Checkatrade. Apologies in advance to any Man United fans on this call, but basically this was a time when Old Trafford's leaky roof went viral. So we created billboards, as you can see in the bottom left, that said leaky roof, leaky defence. There are some things even Checkatrade can't fix. So we kind of had that tongue-in-cheek comedy element to it as well. But this is just another example of how we use sort of multimedia to really generate conversions and traffic. So we obviously had press releases on this as well. Like I said, it has that comedy and sport element. So we got results in the likes of the Sun, Daily Star, Lad Bible, Sky Sports, etc. We also obviously had the out-of-home media. So we had billboards all around Manchester doing that. We had an on-site blog with it. It was pushed on socials. So yeah, we saw a 21% increase in Northwest Leeds, 15 million impressions, 17 links, and that was all within 24 hours. So it's just a really nice example of sort of a high impact all-round marketing campaign. So a few key takeaways from me. So the links are still very important, but we need to adapt to a changing landscape. The customer journey is changing, and we need to update our organic strategies to facilitate both customers and Google's needs. We need to utilize different channels, think beyond PR, think beyond link building to respond to the revolution in the media landscape and the customer journey. And get yourself and your team thinking like marketing all-rounders, changing how you measure success. And that's me. Thank you very much, guys.
Fantastic, Will. Thank you very much. Very informative and very funky, as I would expect from yourself. So very practical tips in there as well, which is fantastic. I've got a great question following through on that. Thanks to Alec. So he says that we keep hearing more and more about EAT, how it's growing in importance more than ever. But what does this actually mean right now for us as SEOs? Specifically SEOs who maybe smaller to medium brands with sort of smaller budgets, lesser brand searches maybe than some of the big boys. He's asking what outside of the box methods are there that we can take to improve EEAT?
Interesting question. Yeah, so EAT is, I think, from what I've learned or been learning over the last 6 months, is essentially coming from because AI has sort of sat itself in the middle of the shallow and the deeper topics. The experience, expertise, authoritative, and trustworthiness are basically all of those elements combined in what AI does for you. It gives you that direct answer. It gives you exactly what you want to hear. So in terms of what we can be doing, I would start with the easy steps. So like you said, if you are a smaller team and you don't, have tons of resources, etc., having a look at your blogs, are you answering those questions directly? Are you giving the user experience exactly what they need? Are you doing more sort of tips-based press releases and proactives? Being informative and engaging, and just make sure that the content on your site and the content that you're delivering, whether it's even on social media, is all of those things in one. And I think that would be, if I was starting from scratch, that is exactly what I'd be doing. Every time I'm writing a piece, whether it's a blog or a press release, does it have the experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness that we need?
Fantastic. Another question in from Becky. How would you recommend getting buy-in from higher up, more senior people, especially for more creative ideas? In her team, the press releases are fairly standard, not that creative. It's hard to encourage people to shake things up a little bit. Time and budget's always a factor, but we probably all know that actually creativity doesn't have to cost anything. But how can Becky help sort of get buy-in from above, really, to do things different?
Yeah, honestly, it is. I honestly think it's the hardest part is getting it because there is absolutely no doubt that it can be a risk. I think the word stunt is kind of thrown around like, oh, let's try something stunty. And sometimes when you're doing the deliverables to your client or your brand, they kind of like, oh, well, there's no guarantee of return and it might cost me a lot of money. So it is always a risk. But the two things I would say are, firstly, it's how you sell it in. 100%. It's almost that salesman element. If you're on the fence about spending money on anything in the world, you kind of need to be convinced sometimes. So if you genuinely have a really good idea and you've backed it with data and experience, you've shown them examples of how you've done something similar before and the success you've had, you sell it in as well as you possibly can. Get them involved as well with the ideation. So when you are coming up with the ideas, if you can initially get your client or brand sort of on board early days, wanting to explore something, it always helps. But also I would recommend fit it in with the regular day to day would be my other thing. So don't put all your eggs in one basket and kind of think if we do this campaign and it fails, this brand is going to be really mad at us. Continue the other stuff underneath. Make sure you've left some spare time to do some proactives and build some links in the background, and switch it up each quarter. So maybe say, okay, we've had great organic success over the last 3 months. Can we try something new to really push brand over non-brand, for example? So yeah, how you sell it in, and just make sure you've got a bit of a backup plan in case you do have the awkward meeting if it hasn't worked.
Yeah, no, I love it. Baby steps, a little bit, 10% of your effort maybe in doing something differently, and just try it and with guardrails and see what happens. But fantastic. Thanks so much, Will. Really, really insightful.
That's good.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to speaker number 3 now. So I'm going to invite Lauren Henley, digital PR campaign consultant impression, to load up her slides. She's going to talk about capturing your customers' pain points. And as she does that, I will share some facts. So Lauren didn't go to university. Her first marketing job 12 years ago was an SEO apprentice, buying backlinks. Don't be doing that anymore, folks. Is her strong advice. Shows how things change. She's a parent to a 9-year-old son, so outside of work, you'll most likely find her on an adventure with him or playing Minecraft. And I believe she's been building some pretty funky pink animals on there at the minute, which my boys were impressed with last night. And she's also a huge fan of reality TV and sport, so a great addition to any pub quiz team that you might have coming up. So without any further ado, over to you, Lauren.
Thank you, Rick. You see my screen and everything, okay?
Perfect.
Yep, cool. Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be here, nestled between some very fabulous speakers. Ooh, here we go. Before we kick off, I'd love to introduce myself. So I'm Lauren, and I'm the digital PR campaign consultant at Impression, where I support a great team of PR specialists. I joined Impression last year in 2024, after working with agencies for about 12 years in different SEO and PR roles. Over that time, I've been really fortunate to work with lots of different companies around the world of all sorts of sizes and sectors to help grow their presence online. Today, I'll be explaining the importance of understanding your customers when building out your digital PR campaigns and how those campaigns can boost your brand and organic performance. Over the last few years, there's been lots of conversation in the digital PR industry about relevance. One way to ensure your stories and campaigns are relevant is by gaining an in-depth understanding of what your customers are trying to reach. So without this, your organic strategies will lack impact. And this is especially true when it comes to digital PR, and here's why. We know that your organic strategy can't begin and end on your website, and off-page signals like backlinks and mentions, they play a crucial part in both Google's understanding of your brand, but also a potential customer's awareness of the products and services that you provide. When your content addresses real pain points, it aligns with what users are actively searching for, which boosts relevance and builds credibility and trust. PR campaigns that tell the right story and land in the right place can build awareness, can strengthen those EEAT signals, and it helps to increase your topical authority in the eyes of search engines. We know that news sites are naturally authoritative, and I don't just mean in terms of domain authority or domain rating. Sites that offer news, whether that's the big nationals or the niche titles, they've built their authority over time through link equity, engagement, and by proving their expertise. So being mentioned or even linked to by one of these sites, it sends powerful trust signals to prospective customers that your business is both reliable and credible. But we all know to create a story that's worth being featured in an authoritative title, you do have to earn it. So the era of dodgy data sets and fake experts is behind us. And this is especially true with the emergence of AI-generated experts that I've seen popping up, as journalists doing even more due diligence into their sources. So to be featured in the most credible publications, your content needs to be relevant to your brand and the audience. It needs to solve a problem or highlight an important issue, and it has to have that human interest angle. So without one of these different elements, your content is at worst unlikely to be picked up, but at best it will be picked up without making an impact or leaving a lasting impression on readers. By owning an issue that's important to your audience, you can create stories that really resonate. Not only will this help to build awareness, but it also helps to support your organic objectives by increasing link opportunities and boosting EEAT signals for your brand and their experts. Customer insights give you the opportunity to take action and create solutions that solves real people's real problems. So how can we create stories that cover the three important factors that I just outlined? First, you need to establish what relevance really means for you. So your aim should be to earn coverage and links from domains and publications that relate to your core offering and to your target audience. So stop creating campaigns that are just for Google. Google originally won the battle of the search engines by putting users first with more user-friendly design and ranking domains based on merit to offer the user more useful and trustworthy results. So we can take a lesson from Google itself here by putting our audience first when coming up with PR campaign ideas. To uncover the topics and themes that underpin an effective digital PR strategy, we use something at Impression called the BIC framework, which stands for Brand, Issue, and Customer. This leads us to campaigns that are relevant and effective enough to reach the right audience, but also creative enough to capture attention and resonate. We start by identifying issues that directly impact customers. You can do this externally through social listening, like on different subreddits, Facebook groups, or TikTok tags, or even using Google Trends to look at long tail terms that are rising in interest. But you can also look internally. So have a look at which site pages are increasing in traffic, what people are searching for in your site search bar. You can start to understand who's using your products and why. And this can uncover all kinds of stories that will matter to those people. So now that we've gathered insights into relevant trends and topics, we can start thinking about how your brand fits in. We typically ask questions like, what are your brand values and what does the business care about? By matching these common search queries and trends, you can begin to see how your PR content can genuinely help readers. Next, you consider the problems that are driving people to search for help online. Think about why customers buy from you and what problems your products solve for them. What do you wish your prospective customers knew about your brand? The final step is to define who your typical customer is. If you've got in-depth demographic data, that's amazing. But if not, you can build out customer profiles and personas, which can really improve your media list when you go out to press. You can also tap into those niches and interests that are common to your customer base, which makes your stories much more effective. And this gives you more outreach opportunities too. So here's the outcome of when we used this framework before for a campaign for a young driver's insurance brand. By understanding their customer base, which was predominantly learner drivers and their parents, we discovered that there was a growing concern about abuse young drivers face when they were learning to drive. The brand values centered around empowering learner drivers and calling that issue out. So this led to a campaign idea focused on increasing penalties for those who do abuse learner drivers while they're out learning to drive. The campaign was especially relevant for news, motoring, and student media, which was perfect because that's the exact kind of brands that the publication, the exact kind of publication that the brand wanted to be featured in. So how did we capture those customer challenges that informed an effective campaign idea? We began by conducting a census across the brand's customer base, and this really helped us to understand the common pain points and the real challenges that learner drivers face when they are learning to drive. This census gave us a list of challenges which we could explore further until we found one that really aligned with the brand's values and had strong media appeal too. Each one went through additional research and creative testing to ensure that the idea was going to work for both the brand and the media. Once we identified the right issue, we dug deeper into collecting supporting data and real-world experiences. We then drove action through a petition submitted to the UK government, which highlighted the idea, backed it with data, and then included that human impact case studies to give it the appeal. This was all teamed with clients' expert commentary that we used to secure media coverage. And we use that coverage to encourage people to sign the petition in support of learner driver safety. So the outcome of this campaign was that we drove over 130 links in 6 months, which is great because it was from authoritative and relevant publications. But more importantly, it drove over 10,000 petition signatures. The key to this campaign's success was capturing customers' pain points, building awareness through action, and reinforcing it with the client's expertise. By advocating for their customers, the brand spotlighted an issue rarely covered by the media and brought it to the forefront. So by making this campaign both brand and customer centric, we were able to maintain an effective digital PR strategy that consistently earned links over time. And that in turn helped to boost both organic visibility and drive stronger rankings for commercial keywords. So to wrap up, I've got 2 simple actions that you can take away and start implementing now to ensure that your customers are at the centre of your digital PR strategy. The first is to implement your own process to understand customer pain points. There's lots of data out there and it's easy to get overwhelmed. So if you can create your own framework, like the big framework that we use, it gives you a really clear path to follow. The second tip is to run that framework against your own business. Be curious and don't get stuck on one data point. If you find something interesting and you dig a bit deeper, you might find that it's not the right fit and you've kind of wasted a bit of time. But with the right idea, you will tick both of the boxes of relevance and resonance for your customers. So that is all from me. Thank you so much for listening and welcoming me at short notice. If you'd like to keep in touch, feel free to send me a LinkedIn request. My username's here.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That was really, really fantastic. Bit framework, really nice, clear, simple. So I'm sure lots of people will be thinking about how to implement that themselves. I've had a question through from, I'm not sure if it's Rika or Richa. They've asked, Lauren said they did further testing and research into the list of challenges. How did you do this research? Was it through commissioning a consumer survey externally, or do you know how you did that?
Yeah, so we did the census for the client's user base, and then we did some sort of social listening. We looked into student forums where there was a lot of learner drivers there. So it was a lot of just gathering little bits of information to build a bigger picture. I think you can, yeah, just dig into things and see if they work.
It's that classic case of sort of multiple sources, a little bit of client data, a little bit of data research, then by the time, and then some external stuff.
Yeah.
So ONS is good like that for as well, isn't it, to help you build up those data sets.
Yeah. But for this particular one as well, we got in touch with driving instructors to see if it was a real issue, and they sort of got on board. So yeah, it was a lot of different sources.
Fantastic, fantastic. So what processes can work to really understand those customer pain points? How can people really sort of dig into that?
So we've covered a few of them already, but I think it is just gathering that information. So collect different case studies, obviously check if they're happy to be quoted, commented in the media if you want to push them out. But either way, it helps to build a picture of the challenges that people have got. Step outside of marketing teams, so interview like salespeople, customer success teams, because they often hear anecdotes all day of real world pain points and emotional stories that you can kind of look through to see what people want help with and how you can support through content.
Yeah, fantastic. And in terms of thinking around how businesses can really understand their customers, obviously the bigger businesses might have internal customer success teams or sort of data analysts focused on that. But for other sort of smaller, mid-sized businesses, what internal resources can people really utilize to help understand their customers?
So again, I think it's just speaking to different departments like your sales team and that kind of thing, account managers. There's also your analytics platforms. So obviously Google Analytics, you can get a lot of demographic data. You can see what pieces of content people are engaging with the most. And using your site search, looking through the history of that, because it might give you a few little threads to pull and go down and research. There's also like user research and product feedback. One thing that I like to do with reviews is like I'll pull the reviews for a brand and put them in ChatGPT and just ask what are the common themes that you can see. And that does start to flag different things that you can go and dig into.
Yeah, I'm hearing about being inquisitive. We find this as well. Often there's so much data and information within businesses in silos that people haven't thought of using for sort of comms, marketing. That's there, it exists. You've just got to go and dig into it and think on who else might know something around our customer that we've not thought of
Yeah,
using before. So
absolutely. It's so easy to get stuck into like the campaigns, the day to day, but we're all nosy. That's why we work in PR. We're a little bit nosy. You have to just use
absolutely,
them.
absolutely. Fantastic. Well, Lauren, thank you so much. Extra special thanks because you stepped in at the last minute for an ill colleague, Emma. So hope Emma's on the mend and did a fantastic job. Shared some fantastic tips. So huge thanks from me and from all the team here. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so last but most definitely not least, I'm going to be handing over now to Sarah Jane Taylorson, Senior Digital PR Manager at Cedarwood Digital. She's going to be looking at putting your thinking caps on, 6 hats to inspire digital PR ideas. And as SJ sort of takes over the mantle, getting her slides on, I'll again share some fun facts. She's the proud owner of a rescue greyhound, so spends a lot of time, lots of her days looking after him in his racing retirement. She's a huge Taylor Swift fan and can probably, if I'm talking about her or listening to her, probably all times of day and night by the sound of it. And she spent the first few years of her life living in Oman, very interesting, and spent a year at university in the USA. So definitely lots of travel tips to share as well. So over to you, Sarah Jane.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Can you see that my screen there?
Yes, we can.
Amazing. Yeah, so just a little bit about me. I'm a senior digital PR manager at Cedarwood. So we are a Manchester-based agency that specialise in SEO, PPC, and digital PR. I've got around 8 years' experience in digital marketing and PR. I've worked in-house, agency side, working everything from hotels, jewellery, iGaming, meal delivery, insurance, the whole spectrum of ideas. And one thing I'm really passionate about is finding new ways to unlock creativity, both within yourself and within your team, to kind of maximize the ideas that we're putting out. So here's a little anecdote around where my kind of fascination with creativity came from. As a child, I absolutely loved pigs. It's probably another interesting fact about me. I still do. And I remember at school being set a task to write anything. It was a creative writing task. We could write anything. It could be about anything we wanted. It could be any format. And it just completely stumped me. It blew my mind. And I think it was just the sheer amount of possibility just had me completely paralyzed at what to do. I knew I wanted to write a booklet on looking after pigs because again, it was like my top interest as a child for some reason. But I just remember having an absolute meltdown because I couldn't put my finger on why I just couldn't think of an idea. And I think from there, for a long time, I thought, well, I'm just not creative because to me, that just was, if a creative person could just come up with ideas on the spot and it was as easy as that. And as I've kind of gone through life and through my professional career, I've realized creativity is just finding ways to unlock that in yourself and kind of work not against your brain, but with your brain to unlock those ideas. And I think Edward de Bono, who is the founder of the 6 Hats, put this really well. He said, the main difficulty of thinking is confusion. We try to do too much at once. Emotions, information, logic, hope, and creativity all crowd in on us. It's like juggling with too many balls. And I think working within PR, marketing, or the creative industries, we are all very familiar with this feeling of sometimes it's just like information overload and we don't know where to begin. Even, if we're seasoned professionals, we've done it many times before, it can be so easy to just get caught off guard and not know where to start. And I think, interestingly, this is a big issue within our industry. So BuzzStream did a survey and found that 31% of digital PR pros found that measuring impact was the most difficult part of their job, and 30% felt that ideation was. And what's interesting about this is that we're looking at 2 opposite ends of the spectrum here. So we're looking at the very start of kind of coming up with these ideas and then how we measure performance, how we measure against KPIs. And I would propose that the 2 should go hand in hand. So making that kind of first step a little bit easier should make that measurement phase easier as well. Because we know that good ideas don't always equal good results. And what we think might be a great idea, looking at one very single-sided point of view, won't necessarily equate to the performance that we need. And this is where the importance of structured thinking comes in. So it's all about kind of keeping a framework around you to help drive those ideas forward, keep the team aligned, and also try and meet those wider goals and KPIs and objectives. But obviously, creativity and structure, it can sound like a bit of a juxtaposition, but realistically, that structure should just be a guide to help keep you on track and to make sure that you're getting the most out of your creative ideas as well. So, what are the six hats? Because that's what I'm here to talk to you about. So, in 1985, Edward de Bono published this idea, and initially it was to help decision makers come up with ideas and come to a conclusion in meetings. And since then, it's become quite widely adopted in the creative industries as a more structured way of tapping into ideas. And we use that by looking at the six key mindsets that we all naturally adopt. So every person will naturally lean towards one or two hats. Sometimes it's very obvious which way we lean, and you probably, as we go through the different hats, you'll be able to see kind of where you might think you sit. But it's all about kind of tapping into that and realizing the strengths and weaknesses and the limitations that each of these hats hold in order to kind of unlock ideas and make them even better. So what are the actual six hats? So they're categorized under colors. So we'll start with blue, which is the process management color. So they're really focused on pushing the idea forward, staying on task. This might be your account manager. If you're in-house, it might be you as the brand manager, or a lead, whatever it might be. They're the ones that are kind of setting the brief, making sure that we stay on the brief and we deliver. The white are mainly concerned with facts and information. So they're really all about gathering information, and they're looking at data, statistics. So this might be your SEO team. It might be the person who's really concerned with, right, we need to make sure this is as aligned as we can be with, our keyword focuses or our overall SEO goals. Or even a data journalist as well on your team is very likely to fall into this white hat category. Reds are very driven by their feelings and intuition. So usually a red hat thinker is somebody who has a kind of gut reaction to an idea, or they have an instant emotional connection to something and they feel very strongly about it, whether it's good or bad. Arguably one of the most important hats, I think, in digital PR, and I'll come to that in a few slides as to why that is as well. So, and then we come to the black hat, and I think the black hat can be a little bit misunderstood because on the surface, looking at risks, difficulties, and problems can seem like a really negative thing, but they're actually one of the most important parts of this process because they're the ones that are going to help you identify any weaknesses in your campaigns. I kind of call them the devil's advocate of the group. They're probably going to raise the questions and the concerns that your point of sign-off is going to have as well, whether that's your client or somebody higher up on the team. So they're really important to have in the process there as well. Even though sometimes they can clash a little bit with the likes of the yellows and the greens, it helps them to kind of rein back in as well. And then yellow, as I've mentioned, these are the positive thinkers, usually come in with brightness and optimism, and they're looking at the benefits of the ideas. They're looking at how will this work rather than why won't it work. And then lastly, but not least, is our greens. So the creative thinkers, these are the ones that are coming up with like new ways to do things, endless possibilities, bigger, bolder. Will already touched upon it in his campaign, and I was going to mention this, but the floated down the Thames types, or indeed the fly it up to space types if you're on Will's team. So these are the guys that are maybe kind of unlocking the ideas and taking them to the next level as well. So now we know what every colour is, how do you go about identifying your colour? And I popped this Aristotle quote in, and it is a little bit of fun, but really it is important to remember that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, and having that self-awareness not only helps you with the way you approach problems and coming up with creative concepts, but also helps your team as well. And the more kind of self-aware you can be and share that amongst your team, the more you can kind of help each other with your positives and your negatives and really bring the most out of every idea that you've got. So a great way to approach this is to ask your team, sit down, put some time aside and really kind of pick apart what you guys think is your positives and your weaknesses. There's a lot of quizzes online that you can take that are super quick and simple. The Edward de Bono, the de Bono group have a page as well, which gives you loads more information. But I've linked out a quiz here that you can take that should tell you predominantly which colour you are. And yeah, it's all about writing down those strengths and weaknesses. It might be that you want to have like a little post-it note on your desktop just to remind you of where you might have limitations with your creative thinking or where you should be building on. And it's really about playing into those and learning from other colours as well in your group to see where you can kind of maybe unlock new ways of thinking. But yeah, importantly, some people really lean towards one colour very strongly. Some people might be two or three. There's no kind of set rigidness of which colour you sit in. And I would say as well, I think that can change with experience and expertise as well. So every kind of colour hat naturally sits into each phase of the ideation process within digital PR. And I've put together a really kind of brief guide as where each hat naturally thrives to make you kind of aware of how you're probably doing this without even realising it as well. So this pre-ideation phase, the before, is where we're looking at doing all our audits, we're looking at our market research, competitor research, goals and objectives. So that can be everything from, do we know where we want to build topical authority? Where do we want to build links to? What's the backlink gap like? It's kind of laying out the groundwork to make sure that we're staying on brief. And this is where we would then put together a nice in-depth brief for the team to share in plenty of time. So this is where your white and your blue hats really come into play. This is where you should be focusing on fact finding and make sure that you're getting the ideation off on the right foot by making sure that brief is as tight as it can be and you've thought of all the kind of contributing data and facts beforehand as well. And then when we're looking at during, this is all about having an open forum for ideas. Ideation is particularly for junior members of the team, it's quite a daunting space to be in. If you've never kind of had that open forum of no idea is a good idea. The opposite, no idea is a bad idea. Big or small, it could be a seed of an idea, it could be a fully fledged campaign. This is where you really want to come prepared with a positive approach and an open mindset and kind of make sure that we're looking at every avenue and maximizing every idea. So yeah, it's really about creating that safe space for everyone with the right kind of approach to ideation as well. And then afterwards is where we're going to be reviewing the ideas. We're going to be looking back to the brief, so going back to that blue again a little bit, lining that back up with our objectives and thinking more critically as well. So I'd argue this is where the red and black come into play. This is where you want to stress test any methodologies you've got. If you're looking at doing a bigger data campaign, let's see that we can, how feasible is the data collection? Does it sit within our budget? Can we do it within the time that we've got? All these kind of, maybe seemingly more boring things that people might struggle with that are more creative. It's really kind of tapping into that, thinking about every single minute detail. And then red, which I mentioned earlier, I think is probably one of the most critical parts of our job as digital PRs, is that emotional response, because you don't have a story without an emotional response. It could be that it drives disgust or humor or joy, whatever it might be. You need that emotional connection to a story in order to get a journalist to open your pitch, in order to get it published and to get eyes on the coverage and then people back to your site as well. So it's really about kind of playing off that data, but also that initial emotional gut feeling too. And then we're looking at how we can apply the 6 hats to the ideation process. As Rick mentioned, I am a greyhound owner, and this is probably a bit of a cheap shot to make sure everyone's still watching. But here's a nice picture of my dog in a hat. So this is what De Bono proposed is the kind of initial framework to the 6 hats, and he calls it parallel thinking. And it's all about the team aligning on the same hat at the same time, and we're all staying in the same kind of process to make sure that we're picking apart every idea as we go. And this structure works particularly well if you have like a short list of ideas that you want to kind of stress test and really pull apart. So to start with, we would be looking at step 1, which would be blue. So again, starting to define the brief, look at the goals of the objectives of the ideation. What do we want to end up with? Just laying the groundwork. Then we want to go into our white hat. So this is, what are the SEO goals? What are our target publications? Do we have the available data sources? Laying the groundwork to make sure that we actually have done the initial research to back the ideas. Step 3 would be yellow. So this is where we're going to approach building ideas with an open mindset. So it's about laying that groundwork for the team to say, right, what's everyone got? What do they think of this? What are the benefits? How could this work? Really looking at the positives of the campaign. Step 4 is red. As I mentioned just in the previous slide, this is where we really want to consider the emotion behind the story and how it's going to make us feel. I always call this the kind of like so what colour. A great example of this is if you had a client that was working in the bed industry and a keyword they wanted to focus on was mattress cleaning. Yes, maybe we've decided we're going to do a thought leadership piece on how to clean your mattress. So yes, it aligns with our goals. We can get the data or the expertise. It's, we're excited by it because we know the client will sign it off, but why should a journalist care about that? We need to add some sort of human element. So maybe it's adding disgust, like how filthy do people's mattresses really get? It's kind of bringing in every human element to the kind of groundwork you've done there as well. Then we move into the black hat, and this is very important because while we might be super positive about everything we've done up until this point, we need to kind of go back and think about any limitations. So again, are we going to get it signed off by the legal team if it's a really big idea? Is it within our budget? Has it been done before even? Because that's something that can be a bit overlooked sometimes when we get excited about an idea. It's just kind of making sure we've thought about all the potential pitfalls of a campaign before we spend too much time investing in it and then we find we've lost time and kind of resource as well. Then we move into step 6, which is the green. So this is where we're going to be refining the idea and the approach and unlocking like a new level of creativity if we can. And this is where kind of maybe branching out ideas onto other platforms or then like maybe it's we want to put it into email marketing, start including influencer, which has been mentioned in previous talks as well. It's about we've done all the groundwork. We know this is a great idea. So how can we maximize it? Whether it's new angles that you can take with the data that you have, planning out kind of visual concepts, infographics, interactive assets, just really kind of tapping into that interactive green side. And then lastly, we would kind of always think of it as quite circular. So you then want to kind of finish on your blue again. You want to make sure that we've wrapped it back up. We feel like it fits the brief, it fits the goals, it fits the objectives, and we're ready to go forward and present the idea. So this is we would usually say around 4 minutes per hat as a guideline. And it gives you a really simple way to follow a structure as a team. The next way is to rotate hats between your team. So as I've mentioned, everyone naturally sits within a hat. I'm personally a yellow, so for me it's quite difficult to have the more black hat way of thinking where you think of the negative side. But this is where it's important to identify where you and your team sit. And before an ideation, assign colours to the team that aren't naturally theirs and really get them to think about all the different elements of a campaign, all the different sides of it that they might not naturally think of. It just kind of flexes everyone's muscles of creative thinking a little bit and it can bring out new ideas that we might not have thought of as well. Use opposing colours to stress test concepts. So a great way to do this if you had like, again, 1 or 2 final campaign ideas that you wanted to whittle down is to split the team into 2. Down the middle, we're looking at opposing colours. So red is usually the opposing to white, yellow is usually the opposing to black. So we want the team to kind of almost in a healthy debate say, yes, but have we thought of this? Yes, but have we thought of this? It's really unpicking the idea right down to its bare bones so that you've thought about every single element of it from data, from emotional response, from the positives, from the negatives, whatever it might be, you have a full in-depth idea of how this idea is going to work. And then I like to use what are the 6 killer questions that all fit in line with the blue hats as well. So this is a great way to prepare yourself if you're going into that presentation to share your ideas and just to really kind of have these top of mind or even just to quite literally write them down after you've had an ideation and pull it apart so you can see it visually. Number 1 would be, does the campaign respond to the set brief? So this is the really blue way of thinking. And it sounds very, very obvious, but sometimes if you're a green, if you're a yellow or even a red, you're very likely to get carried away with your ideas and you might have completely forgotten what the actual brief set was, or you might have strayed a little bit too far from the brief. And it's just about reining that back in to make sure that we are responding to what's been asked of us. How does the data back it up? And will it help us reach our organic performance goals? So there's 2 sides of this. If we're looking at a data campaign, again, have we made sure we can access that data? Because there's nothing worse than proposing an idea and then going to work on it and realizing the data actually isn't available or it's not realistic or it's not going to tell the story we need it to. And then on the flip side of that, looking at how is it going to help us reach our goals. So is it aligned in the topical authority that we want it to be? Is it linking back to the pages we want it to link back to? Is it hitting the right, is it going to target the right kind of outlets that we want it to? It's really thinking back and driving into the statistics and the data. Then third, as I've mentioned earlier a few times, what is the emotional hook that makes the news story? This is without a doubt my number one question every time I pitch a campaign. Why? So what? Why should people care? People have to care on some level. So always have this top of mind as well. Then moving into the black hat, what are the limitations of the campaign and do we have any blockers? So as I've mentioned, blockers can be everything from health and safety, which I know has been mentioned earlier, to getting sign off from a legal team, to financial restrictions, or even the campaign's been done before. There's lots of things that can go wrong, and we know this working in digital PR is a very fast moving industry. So it's just about preempting those negatives before we get to that point, just to save us time and resource. Am I confident in this concept and how do I showcase the benefits? I think you need to have that confidence and that positivity to the idea to really get that across. Selling in creative ideas is hard, so making sure you've really thought about why do people want to buy into this. It kind of ties back to the yellow, but just having that open mindset as well. And then lastly, can we take this to the next level? Are there even more angles we can consider? Are there even more channels that we can maximize this on, whether it's social media, email marketing, Reddit, LinkedIn, whatever it might be, really thinking about how we can push this even further and make it work as hard as possible. So there are 6 kind of key questions. And then I just want to end with saying, keep your hat on when you share those ideas. As I've mentioned, securing buy-in on creative ideas is really difficult. Creative campaigns can be quite subjective, and the goal of using a framework like this is to kind of remove that subjectivity from it a little bit as well. By coming prepared, you've done your work with the hats on, you've kept the hats on to present, you are almost preempting questions that you could have. So in an ideal world, you'll have done so much background and research with these 6 hats on that you might not even have any questions because you've preempted their concerns or their queries. So it's really just making sure that you've kind of thought of that from start to end as well. So yeah, that's how to use the 6 hats for ideation. If you want to reach out, please feel free. I've left my LinkedIn and Twitter and stuff at the beginning. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah Jane. Again, super useful and practical frameworks to kind of use there and something quite different. I think you probably helped to answer one of the questions we had earlier from Becky about how to get buy-in from senior people. So using that framework, as you just mentioned, then could potentially be part of that as well. So Sarah had asked a question throughout that as well, but do you think one person can have multiple thinking hats? Or do they all have to be different? And obviously you talked around deliberately giving people different hats to sort of stress test campaigns, but could each individual sort of naturally fit in more than one hat bucket? That's a right words. Hat box.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, to be honest, it can be really. It also, people can be having a bad day, and that could affect what hat they're wearing, or they could be having a really great day, and that can affect how you're feeling and how you come to an ideation. And it's just about having that self-awareness. I know, as I say, like I naturally sit in yellow, and I'm trying to force myself to be a little bit more of a black hat, and it feels like it goes against my natural personality, I would say, but I know that ultimately it benefits the team, and there's ways of going about it where you're not upsetting people. It's constructive. So it's definitely like it can change, and it can change over years and experience as well.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. How can you balance that creativity? I think it was the green hat with the focus on the SEO results and the very data-driven approaches that the white and the yellows, I think, was right. So how can people really sort of balance that in a practical way?
Yeah, I think it's about seeing that kind of SEO approach, or like the white hat, as a springboard. It's not a constraint. It's not you saying this is the only thing we can work on because this is the goal. It's about saying this is a starting point and go from there. Because I think the worst thing you can do on an ideation is to put too much restraint into it. And I've had that in the past where maybe we've been a bit too prescriptive in what we want, and it's just completely stunted any kind of concept. And I would say it's much easier to rein it in and try and take something back to relevance than it is to come up with an idea with a brief that is so small and so tight that you can't move anywhere from it.
Sure. Okay. So there's a question coming here. It's not directly related to your colours, so I'm going to see if we might catch you out here, thinking on your feet. We'll, test you out. So thanks, Taryn, for the question. What's the correlation between SEO, social, YouTube, etc.? Should SEO start to work closer with those teams for SEO and LLM visibility benefits?
Yeah, I think Louise touched on this a little bit, I think earlier, in that ironically, I think the way PR is going now is it's digital PR is becoming more what traditional PR or PR has always been. And that's always been kind of creating a brand story across multiple channels. And that's where the LLMs are picking up on that. So I think we talked about maximizing ideas onto other channels, and it is just about that consistency as well. So being able to tie in closely with your social teams or your content creation teams is going to help tell that story, and it's going to kind of reaffirm what your brand is all about as well. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think the term of brand is back. We're hearing that a lot, aren't we? And that
Yeah.
story, and the sort of storytelling into lots of places, I think is really important. Trying to get that red thread into all those different
Yeah.
things. And often we see that there's lots of silos between different departments looking after those different channels and trying to elevate up a little bit and sort of bring all that together, isn't it? So,
Yeah, there was a really interesting talk last week I don't know if anyone went to the Digital PR Summit, but they discussed how Google is now recognizing it's not just brands with the sheer number of links, it's brands with number of links plus brand signals, and they have to be in correlation, because if not, it looks off and it isn't natural. And that is what PR should be, really.
yeah, fantastic. And so, I'm guessing, are you proponent that people should push themselves out of their natural hat, or should they stay in it? And how would you, if people should push themselves out, how would you recommend they can kind of open their mind to that growth mindset, I suppose?
Yeah, I think it depends on your team, because you might find that your team is naturally quite balanced. And in that case, I would suggest it might be helpful to try and push your team to do different hats just to see how it goes. But I think where this really works is where if you're coming into a new team and you're trying to understand what people's thinking patterns are, if you work on your own, you're a freelancer, that's when it's really important. Like you're a kind of a very small team, that's where it's super important to push yourself out, I think. It's like I read it somewhere, it's like having multiple consultants in one brain. That's where you need to kind of push it a little bit. So it's about doing the research and then figuring out, like there's loads of resource online on like how the hats naturally sit and what questions you should be asking yourself and how you can apply that. So I think it's about awareness more than anything, and it's not that it might be working for you and you might be a really well-rounded thinker, but I would guess that most of us aren't so equally split that we can't do better in one color that we're not looking at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, so Jane. That was
Thank
really,
you.
really insightful. So thanks to all the speakers. I'm just going to share my screen again for one more second. So John will be sharing all the presentations and the recordings with everyone as well. So that'll probably be tomorrow. And wasn't that a proper brain boost of a morning? From AI search signals to barefoot creativity, emotional insight to six thinking hats, we've really zigzagged across the landscape of digital PR and strategy like a sophisticated Formula One car, powered by caffeine, cleverness, and quite possibly a little chaos theory. So let's just take a moment to breathe all that in. It wasn't just a set of talks, it was a strategy masterclass. And here's three golden threads I think we can pull through. PR must be intentional. Not everything that gains attention drives momentum. We've seen today how deeply understanding your customer and aligning PR with broader goals and broader brand goals leads to performance that really matters. AI isn't coming, it's here. As Louise brilliantly showed us, the rules of visibility are changing. We must adapt how we pitch, write, and distribute, not for the search engine of 5 years ago, but the LLMs of now. Collaboration equals commercial impact. As Will and Lauren highlighted, great PR doesn't live in a silo. The campaigns that work hardest are born from shared insight, shared goals, and shared thinking across SEO, content, comms, and brand. And of course, Sarah Jane has reminded us that we can have fun whilst we're thinking critically. Whether you're a red hat of passion or a white hat of logic, it's the blend of perspectives that builds truly breakout ideas. So here's something I hope stays with you long after you close your laptop this morning. The future of PR isn't just about being seen, it's about being understood, being relevant, and being useful to the audience. And that requires what we like to call intention-led strategy. Because strategy isn't a slide deck, it's a decision-making lens. It's how we avoid chasing fads and instead build brand equity that earns headlines, search wins, and sales uplifts. And some of the most remarkable campaign results I've witnessed in recent years, market share shifts, cultural cut-through, organic growth that didn't need paid support, were because teams started with intention, with positioning, with clarity. And that's our collective challenge and opportunity from today, to take all this tactical excellence and apply it with big picture thinking. So before we part ways, a few shout outs are well overdue. To our incredible partners and our speakers who've been so generous with their insights and open with their processes, and whose contact details you'll all receive so you can follow up on those and ask further questions on their decks. They've all challenged us, inspired us, and armed us with thinking we can take straight back to our teams, our clients, and our campaigns. So thank you so much to Louise, Will, Lauren, and SJ. Thank you to all of you being here today. Thank you for showing up, for leaning in, for asking questions, and for being part of a real-time learning community. And most importantly, to the man behind the curtain, our maestro of marketing events, Mr. John McCambley. John's ability to curate, produce, and champion sessions that are as useful as they are energizing is second to none. Thank you for putting this all together so flawlessly. So you can all give John a virtual round of applause, even if you're in your kitchen. So what now? That bit's up to you. Whether you're going to take one spark from today or set fire to your entire digital PR strategy in the best possible way, of course. Just promise me one thing. Don't settle for good. Build for great. And always ask, what's the strategy behind the story? Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you at the next digital super chat. Now go do something brilliant. Thank you.